Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if this is your first time here, hello, welcome. This is Essential Patience and I am Patience. So if you've been viewing my channel for a few months now, you would know that I moved. Yes, I moved apartment and I did do a tour of my old apartment. But today we are talking about the cost of moving to a new apartment because it is expensive out here. Rent is going up, things are changing, competition, the economy is tough, but there's always cost when you're moving to a new apartment. And so here I am going to tell you from research and from my experience things that you should really consider when you're moving from one apartment to another, because it's not a cheap process. But before we get to all that, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, like this video, and ring the notification bell. But let's get straight into it. What are the costs associated to moving into a new apartment? One of the first things, of course, is a security deposit. And this is really important, especially if you have already put down a security deposit from your old apartment and you're trying to move into a new apartment. Well, you wouldn't get that security deposit back until you move. So while you're applying for apartments and you are trying to get into a new one, you need to put down one before your move-in date. And because of that, you would need to make sure you save money for a security deposit. Luckily in Texas, most security deposits are around like $500, sometimes even less. Sometimes you don't even need to put one at all. But if you're in one of the very expensive states like New York City, Boston, sometimes even in Maryland, they ask you to put down a security deposit that's worth about 1 to 2 months of your rent, and that's a lot of money. So if you plan to move, find out potential apartments that you can be moving into. What does the security deposit situation look like? Because you would want to start saving for that. The second thing, of course, is rent. Rent is going up. Now, oftentimes you move from your old apartment either because of some issues or because rent is going up, or you're moving to a new apartment that costs more than your old apartment. And so you have to consider your new rent situation, your new utility situation, because when you move, you still may have to pay the utilities for the old place and the rent for the old place while moving into the new place. Or you may have to pay like the new rent starting this month for here while you're still in the moving process. So for example, when I moved in here, I still had the lease for my old apartment. So I had to have that transition period where I had 2 apartments with 2 rents, and that can be very expensive, with 2 utility bills. That was something on its own. But when you take a look at that situation and that could possibly happen to you, you want to start preparing for that so that you'll be ready for that financial impact, because it is not cheap, but it's worth it to save and get ready for that rather than to just step into that situation and to be jarred by it and to be knocked off financially from that. So consider your rent situation in the transition period and utilities. The next thing you want to consider is how you're moving. Are you going to get a U-Haul and haul everything yourself, inviting friends and family over to help you, or are you hiring a moving company? I personally hired a moving company, and let me tell you something that I am glad that I did. And I don't hear a lot of people talk about this, but when you hire a moving company, a lot of times you have to pay for the truck to and from your apartment, or from the old apartment to the newest one. And then you have to pay for the number of crew members, so 2 or 3 people. Then you have to pay per hour for a minimum amount of time, and then you start charging, I think, by like 15-minute increments. I saw this with a lot of companies because I called about 5 different companies to compare. A lot of the companies had a 3-hour minimum. Some even had 2-hour minimum. Most of them were like 3 hours. And I was really baffled by this. I was like, look, I really want to use your company, but I don't want to do 3 hours because I don't have a lot of stuff. I'm somewhat of a minimalist, so I like to keep very few amount of stuff. I'm packing everything. I wouldn't have to be packing a ton of stuff while people are there. My apartments I'm moving from and to, it's like 1 town over. It's not that far from each other. And while I didn't have an elevator for my new apartment, and it's 3 floors, and I was concerned about that, I just didn't have that much stuff. So my biggest concern was that 3-hour minimums were too much for me, because I didn't think it was going to take 3 hours from one apartment to another. And then below for one moving company that had a 1-hour minimum. And I'm so glad I hired them, because my move took about 2 hours, and that's it. Had I paid for that 3-hour minimum, I would have wasted hundreds of dollars on that, because there were some that were charging up to like $200 an hour for a 3-people crew. So I ended up doing a 3-people crew for 2 hours with a 1 hour minimum, and that's all I had to pay. You do have to put down a deposit oftentimes before they even come. Figure out which one works best for you. As a person that was like, I don't want to bother anybody, and when I was doing this move on a weekday, it was just best for me to hire a company to move rather than trying to drive a U-Haul and trying to move a couch. That was going to be a lot for me. And even if I had friends over, I felt like it was going to take more time. It was just going to take people's day, and I just felt more comfortable hiring people out. The next thing is packing supplies. So you're gonna need some packing supplies. I got these big blue bags because they're reusable, and I know I'm not gonna live in an apartment forever, so I'm gonna move someday. So I made sure I got those because I'm like, okay, if I'm moving next time, even though these are an investment now because they were quite expensive, almost $50 for 10 of them, so it's like $5 a bag. But yeah, multi-purpose, I can use them always. I ended up having to buy some more boxes. I ended up recycling those boxes because I didn't want to keep them, even though they were in good condition. But still, I didn't want boxes hanging around for months, over a year, trying to move to the next place and save a couple of bucks. So those have been recycled. But you want to also take in the cost of like tape and any other moving supplies that you need. If you're moving like a ton of glass and other stuff, you maybe need some bubble wraps if you're moving long distance. So whichever it is, find out what supplies you need and factor in that cost, because it's gonna cost money. Moving is expensive, and the boxes are just the beginning. So make a list, make a budget for it, because it's gonna add up quickly. Next are application fees and admin fees. So if you're gonna be applying for apartments, know that they're gonna charge you that. And sometimes they can be as cheap as 10 or 20 bucks for an application, but in some apartments, they are costing over $50 for application and over $100 for administration fee. I think this apartment in total, it was close to $200 for that. But I've heard application fees costing so much money, and oftentimes they're non-refundable. And once you get accepted, you would have to pay for that admin fee. So if you're serious about moving the apartment, make sure that you crack out a small minority so that if you're applying, you don't apply to too many apartments. I only applied to one apartment the first time I was applying to apartments when I was moving to Texas. And then for here, I also applied to only this apartment and none others, so I don't have to waste money. For some reason, you want to apply to multiple because of competition, you're not sure, do what you must, but make sure that you have a budget for that, because those fees can add up quickly. And the next thing is cleaning fee, which I found out could be a scam. Story time. So when I moved into my old apartment, I was offered an extra cleaning fee. And I was interested in the service. If I could pay an extra, I think like $150, they would make sure to clean extra. Now, by law, they do have to make sure it's in a presentable state for you to move in. But I am somewhat of a germaphobe, slightly. So I thought, okay, if I pay this money, I'm gonna move into an apartment that will be spick and span. It's gonna be so clean, I'm gonna have to do minimal cleaning. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. I moved in and that apartment was not any cleaner than it would have been had I not paid for that fee. So you want to ask them, what do you get with the service, and make sure that they know that you're expecting more for that service. Ask them what exactly comes with it. Moving into this apartment, I did not pay an extra cleaning fee, and honestly, it was cleaner than my old apartment when I moved in. So if they are offering extra cleaning fee, you may want to question why you're moving there, because that's a little suspicious. Unless they're doing, I don't know, buffing the windows and just go into every crevices with a toothbrush, I think you can save yourself some money and do the cleaning yourself. Number 7 is minor, because you may not incur any cost on this, but it's moving utilities. So when I was moving utility companies, I did switch my Wi-Fi, but I kept everything else the same. Well, the electricity, the same company. And I didn't incur any extra fees. I just had to pay for both apartments while I had both of them. So that was the extra fee. But if you do have some transfer fees for moving apartments, just get to know that. And you may want to switch altogether if you have to. And they charge you an astronomical amount of money. But overall, it shouldn't be that much money, if any at all. But it's something you just want to find out, because it is possible that you may be charged for transferring. The next thing is insurances. Depending on what apartment you live in, the neighborhood, the city, the state, insurances cost different things. And I'm talking about renter's insurance. If you don't have renter's insurance, you should. A lot of apartments require that you have renter's insurance. My old apartment did, and this apartment does as well. So I have to either take their renter's insurance or find my own. What I did was I found my own, and I paid for, I think, like a year. So I paid all upfront costs, which was slightly expensive, but if you break it down monthly, I am saving like $1, but $1 saved, right? But typically that should be the only insurance that you should have to pay. Going back to a little bit of the security deposit. So for my old apartment, it was standard that you didn't have to put down a security deposit, but you paid a monthly fee of like $9 for as long as you stayed there, and it was non-refundable versus putting down a refundable security deposit. So when I moved here, I was like, oh no, I do want my money back. So I put down a refundable deposit rather than the monthly non-refundable fee. So overall, find out which works for you and what fees and insurances are being incurred and budget for it. The ninth thing is something that can add up so quickly with a blink of an eye, and that is if you have pets. A lot of places want you to pay pet rent, which is so ridiculous to me because your pet is living in the apartment. I understand the pet deposit. You put out an extra $200 to $500 because your pet's going to scratch the wall. You're going to incur some extra damage. I feel like the average apartment without a pet is probably in a better condition than the average apartment with a pet. I'm just saying, like, on average. I'm not saying, pets are bad. So I do understand why it might be required for you to put down a pet deposit. But pet rent, I can never understand. Unless there's some specific pet amenities like a dog park. But even if there is such thing as a pet rent or pet fees monthly being charged, I don't think it should be more than a couple of dollars, maybe $5, $10, and most $25 a month. If that's because they have a dog park. My apartment has the doggy bags around so you can like pick up after your pet. To charge people like $100 extra for a pet rent is ridiculous in my opinion. And all these fees that goes along with having pets, I feel like sometimes it's so much that is it even worth it? So if you have a pet, unfortunately, these are things that you would have to consider if you're moving into an apartment. There's some apartments that I think are even like no pets apartment, but today a lot of apartments are being pet friendly so that they can charge you extra money on there. So shop around and see who's being more reasonable. And the last but absolutely not the least is the miscellaneous ones that just come along just because it's life and things come along. And so it could be as simple as moving into your apartment and realizing that you need to get an extra rug. Maybe you move in and you have to pay for parking. I pay for parking here, and your expenses, so your month-to-month mandatory fees aside from your rent doesn't add up. So it's like you have to pay slightly more at this apartment because they charge you for amenities fee, or maybe you're being charged more for another fee. So whichever it is, have a little bit of money just for miscellaneous things, for things that just happen, because it's life. Things will happen. You just will need to be prepared for it. So with that, I'm bringing this video to an end. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And let me know in the comment section, what are the costs of moving to an apartment for you? And is there any cost that has made you frustrated, or is there any experience that you had that was frustrating for you? I'd like to hear about it. Remember to ring the notification bell because I post 2 videos a week on Tuesdays and on Fridays. Come on over because it is fun and we are talking about so many different things. So join me and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.